Hello, everyone. Okay, so we were all chit-chatting. I'm Jonathan Fishman, and I have Loren Fogelman, and welcome to our webinar. This is the first of three that we intend to do over the course of the first half of 2020. And Happy New Year, and welcome to 2020 to everyone. So this is develop a highly profitable niche for your business. It's one of three. On March 12th, we will have a second time management secrets for the busy accounting professionals. So that's March 12th. And March 14th will be the third of our session. May 14th will be the third of our session, which is ramp up your business, switch from an employee to a CEO mindset. And so I'm going to allow Loren a few minutes to sort of give us some context as to how these three fit together. Then I'm going to just do a little bit of housekeeping, and I want to check in. Can everyone just ping us and make sure that you can hear us okay, and as appropriate see us? So if anyone can just send a chat over and let us know that you're hearing us and seeing us okay, that would be very helpful to make sure. And all of a sudden the sun came out. I might need to. No, I'm all right.
Hi, Linda.
I have a lot of direct light in my office, and so it all of a sudden got really bright.
Amelia, Tanya, great to have you here. Patricia, Shawnee.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, there's these three series, and I'll put this in the chat so everyone knows the dates. And everyone, of course, who signed up today will have the opportunity to sign up these in the future. So Loren, not only a little bit about what we're going to get into today, but how do these all fit together? What's the overall theme of these three, and how do they relate to some of the other activities that you have going on with your practice, and a little bit about who you are?
Okay, so you just threw three things at me at once. I'll go into the first one. The overarching view about what these three are about is that so often accounting professionals, you make such a big difference for your clients, especially when you're helping attorneys out. They really, really need what you have to offer. But a lot of times you end up sacrificing other parts of your life in order to have a business and have income. And then you get to a point where you can't see how to generate more income because you're just maxed out. The series that Jonathan and I are doing is really about how to be able to earn more without additional time spent working, and then starting to shift from that employee to that CEO mindset, because so often when you have your own firm, you come to it and you become self-employed, you become an employee within your own practice, but that is still pretty much trading dollars for hours. Even if you're not doing an hourly rate any longer, you're still pretty much trading time for money. And we want to show you how to start to free yourself from that.
Awesome. And I think that's a really important concept, this idea of, you become a commodity, right? You have an hour, you have so many hours in a day that you could bill, and you max out and you kind of hit your capacity, and you get this, I mean, I had this in my own personal life in a former business where you feel like there's no way to grow. You almost feel held hostage by your business model and your mindset. So a little housekeeping, and then I'm going to
answer the next two questions once you do your housekeeping.
Okay, thanks. So, and we've done this a few times, so we'll be fluid in our back and forth. I want to encourage you to just talk a little bit about LeanLaw, just so everyone understands who we are if you're not familiar with our brand. LeanLaw is a software as a service company. We're exclusively focused on the legal community, and we modernize the invoicing workflow for law firms. Our unique nature is the specificity and focus to law, number one. Number two, we have what we think is the industry's best integration with QuickBooks. And number three is we, unlike any other software platform in the legal space, or truthfully any professional services, value the accounting community as a primary client. Although they're not our paying client, they are heavily influenced us in how we develop our product, how we surface them, and how we collaborate with them to work with the law community. And part of that is our ability to help bring these types of services to that accounting community. So I encourage everyone to become part of our LeanLaw Accounting Pro program. That's kind of our version of the QuickBooks Pro Advisors. where we create community, engagement, education, and other facets of a relationship around servicing law clients. And I'm going to send out that link to everyone in the group. And then in addition, one other thing is that we'll be having a LeanLaw meetup. We do a meetup. We committed to doing 9 a year. And those are very informal, where this is more webinar format. That's very informal, that we collaborate. We'll show off LeanLaw technology. We have a few set up on very specific coaching sessions, but it's an opportunity that I'll bring in my CTO or bring in my partner, Gary Allen, our CEO, and we have a one-on-one conversation with the community about what we're doing. So we'll show off our tech, or we'll talk about a subject that's meaningful in a very almost coaching, hands-on, workshop-y way. Okay, those are the things that and that session is next week, Wednesday at 1 o'clock Mountain, so that's noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, and if you're on this list, you'll get an invite to that as well.
And that's for your meetup, right, Jonathan?
Yeah, that's the meetup. And you've been on a few of those, and they're fun. I mean, they're just like...
I haven't been on one yet.
Oh, you should come, and they're fun. They're like, you know, it's like everyone's heads are up because we're all doing the meet we're doing. And, you know, people are asking questions and collaborating, and the crowd is, you know, talking. It's good fun. We're really like doing it. All right, Loren, you had 2 more points. So
Sure. The reason that you and I are starting off with focusing on niche is because as I was talking with you, I mentioned that that's the very first thing I do with all of my clients. And the other part is because I am getting ready to do a 5-week group coaching program called the Ultimate Pricing Bootcamp. And basically the Ultimate Pricing Bootcamp is to help service-based entrepreneurs, accounting professionals, bookkeepers, to be able to start to separate their fees from time. And the things that we cover is really tuning into your niche as well as your ideal client. And we're going to take a deeper dive into the niche part today. So we're giving you a lot of pre-work from the beginning of this course, but then how to be able to package your services, how to be able to value price them, attract the right ideal clients to you, and really everything that, as well as the mindset piece, because a lot of times we know what we want to do, but we get in our own way, we stop ourselves, we postpone making that decisions because of a lot of different fears that come up as you start to look at your pricing. It can get very, very messy. So with this 5-week course that begins on February 4th, the Ultimate Pricing Bootcamp, it is really about hands-on. It is live group coaching calls where I do a little bit of teaching. I answer your questions. We roll up our sleeves and we get the work done. Because I know that you're busy, and if I can get on a call with you, I know you're more likely to implement during that dedicated time to get the work on your business, because the rest of the time you're so busy working in your business. The other part of it is that I believe that if you implement what we are teaching in the Ultimate Pricing Bootcamp, you are going to make your investment back before the course is even over. I'm very, very confident about that. It can happen very, very quickly. Plus, the other part is that for the LeanLaw community, Jonathan and I talked about, you know, what could I do that would really be special? It's a $1,000 investment for the 5 modules. Usually when I put a course out there, you have access to the modules forever. I don't take them away. They're really open to you whenever you want to access them. But the other part is that for the first 10 people, I know we said 7, but I'm feeling generous right now. The first 10 people, Jonathan, that sign up for the course will get also a private coaching session with me where I will look at your pricing, I'll look at how you're setting up your packages, and really make some fine-tuning adjustments so that you're adding even more value without necessarily trading your dollars for hours. And Jonathan, I'm going to go ahead and just put the link for that in the chat. Oh,
Loren, I already did it for you.
You're so on top of it. Thank you.
So, and I want to be clear about this. We didn't want this series to be, you know, a webinar pitch for Loren. But what Loren's doing is so important, and I've seen people in our LeanLaw accounting program work with her. I wanted to give her a platform to actually offer it because I think that it's so valuable to this community. We get a lot of accounting folks, bookkeepers and accountants come to us, and they're trying to figure out the how, they can get there, and they stumble around the tactics and understanding it. And that's why Loren and I have developed this rapport, and why LeanLaw has recruited Loren to be a partner of ours, because we wanted to share that with the community. And so I want to be clear, we're not trying to sell you anything. We just want to give you the opportunity, because many of you are looking to bring this niching into your business. And this is one vehicle as to execute that, one way to make that investment. So Loren, I want to get into the meat of our conversation.
Sure.
But before we do that, I really want to just allow you just a brief few minutes just to tell about why, your expertise and how it came to be that you know how to do what you do.
Well, to start off, I just found out yesterday, for the third year in a row, I've been listed among the top 22 business coaches globally by HubSpot. So I'm really excited about that. And thank you so much. What I've seen is that I come from a sports psychology turned business coaching background. What I saw for myself is that my education prepared me to work really well for somebody else. It gave me the skill set to do what I do very, very well. However, there were things that it didn't help me with. It didn't teach me how to be an entrepreneur, how to do pricing of my services, how to do sales, how to do networking. Those are things I had to figure out on my own, and I've invested a lot of time, effort, money into it. And I am so passionate about helping entrepreneurs be able to have a business that supports their lifestyle instead of one that sucks the life out of me, because I've had that one too. And I believe that as entrepreneurs, as accounting professionals, as I lift myself up, as I lift you up, you take other people up the ladder with you. And it just spreads that positivity. And that's really, thank you so much, Patricia. That's really part of why I do this work that I do, is because you deserve to be well paid for the difference that you make for other people's lives.
So let's get into our conversation. So, you said something in the intro, which is this idea that, how do you earn more without, additional time spent, so how do you actually increase the income? So let's just start with sort of a core premise and open up that conversation about, a little bit about why, but just what's the core thesis of how you approach that? So, how do you earn more money without working additional hours?
When I have done my research, what I have seen is that the fastest way to earn more money without additional cost or hours is pricing. If research shows that if you even raise your rates by 1%, it leads to like a 10 or 11% increase in profit in your business. Where other things, if you offer more goods, if you offer additional services, there's still a cost associated with it, and that eats into the profit. So pricing is absolutely the best way to be able to become more profitable without having to work additional hours. And when we look at how that applies to you, it's really understanding that specialists and attorneys really understand this very, very well. Specialists earn more than generalists across the board. Therefore, that's why this is really such a match between what you're doing, what LeanLaw has to offer, is that it gives you the platform to really be that go-to expert for attorneys. Now, as you're starting to think about that, what you want to consider moving in that direction is that where is bookkeeping and finances possibly an issue for attorneys? And a lot of times they know what they want, they might not know what they need, or they might not be interested in doing that part of their business. It just isn't something that excites them, even though it needs to be happening. Therefore, when you're looking at some of the issues, is it possibly about IOLTA management that they need, and that's really a problem for them? And that is something that is really risk mitigation, because if they're not managing their IOLTA accounts correctly, then they could be putting their entire business, their firm, at risk with losing their licensure. So that might be something that you help them with. It could be partner allocation reports or a collection strategy, because there's so many places where there probably are black holes or they're leaving money on the table, and you can come in and with your expertise, especially about the needs of attorneys, help them to be able to increase their income, their profitability by some of the resources that you have access to. And the bottom line is really understanding how you uniquely, as a accounting professional that specializes with attorneys, helps them to solve that problem. Yeah. So that's really what I'm looking at, is going from that generalist where you're working with everybody and really digging in deep and going narrow with attorneys.
Yeah, and I think that's, and all I do every day is talk to attorneys and accounting people. And I think that one of the critical first steps is learning the vernacular. And you never can really talk to that attorney, that other professional service provider, without first making a decision that I want to learn to a certain degree, their industry, and their industry relative to their accounting, right? You don't need to understand about court rules. But now that I can speak essentially the financial language of a law firm, it changes the whole context of the conversation. Because LeanLaw, it's almost liberating, and that's the way I put it, is that by LeanLaw focusing on law, it's liberating for us, because when a engineering firm comes to us, I can ignore it. Linda Arnasani's on the call, and I remember she talked about like turning away business, and it's you know, it feels great because you know that's not a good fit. And to your point about pricing, I mean, many of the people who are on the call, and I know a lot of the folks who are on here, mm-hmm. Adding more people, I'm going to go get more clients, which means I need to add more people, is either too complex from a management concept, or it's just not the kind of business they wanted to create. So pricing and niching is the perfect strategy to increase their income and have a more meaningful conversation interaction with your client. Because I think that's what you were getting at, Loren, is that it's like by knowing the pain points and having the language, what you're getting at was that you can have a more meaningful conversation and there's more value to that conversation. So we talked a little bit about, Intuit's research shows that 64%, this was Loren's quote, 64% of their clients come from referrals, right? So mm-hmm. You're getting 64% of your clients from referrals. And that makes total sense, right? Because most of you can't do AdWords, right? Someone doesn't search for you and find you via AdWords. You're going to find it because someone has referred it. So how does someone get the confidence to know that it's going to work? Like if they take that first step and say, I'm going to just be law, how do you work with them to have the confidence to just come over the emotional gaps, right? Of saying, I'm really willing to do that niching.
Well, a lot of times when things come up and you start to overthink it, you doubt yourself. Who are you to be specializing with attorneys, because you don't have the credentialing? They're more educated than you are. They're going to challenge you and question you. All those things come up. A lot of the reasons that someone stops themselves is because they really don't have accurate information, and that inner voice is just getting in their way because it doesn't feel safe. When it doesn't feel safe, it's because many times you're looking at the end result of where you could end up, but we need to be able to chunk it down into baby steps. And by chunking it down into baby steps with what you need to do right now and focusing on that right now, you're moving forward a little bit at a time. It's more like preparing for a marathon as opposed to a sprint. A marathon is a long-term game. When you make a decision to really niche with attorneys, it's not like you fire all your other clients tomorrow and you're going to all of a sudden have this influx of attorneys. It's more of a process that you're gradually doing more and more to be in front of attorneys, to have that awareness. And as attorneys start to become more of your clients, you're able to let go of some of those other non-ideal clients, because I would never want you to make a move in your business where you are getting rid of one flow of income to have another. It's more of a process, and it's a way of doing it without putting that cash imperative in place, because when you're strapped for cash, you don't always make the best decisions. You start to second guess and compromise. So it's more of a process of gradually adding on more and more attorneys, so you can eventually be like Steve, who has 22 clients that are his attorneys right now.
So is the first, I think what I'm kind of walking through and summarizing for myself. So what I heard, the first thing is an acknowledgement that pricing is the best lever I can push to earn more income and work less and have, you know, more of a lifestyle that I want. That's sort of the awareness and recognition. The second thing I heard you say was, okay, I kind of have to make a decision that I want a niche, right? There's this, and obviously pick your niche. All these people are probably interested in law. And then the third is to accept the fact that it's an iterative process, that it's not a 180 that you dump all your clients and all of a sudden be a law only, that it's a series of chunks and over a period, 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, whatever it is, over a period of time, that I'm expecting that a certain percentage of my clients, and the vast majority will be this niche, and I might keep a few, you know, legacy clients that I like because I have good relationships with. So am I summarizing that right?
Absolutely, Jonathan. What I've seen, because we have some clients in common at this point, is that some of them are really fully vested, working only with attorneys right now. Others are making that transition and that shift. In fact, one of them, she just let go of 2 really big clients that were not attorneys last week during one of our coaching calls. She told me about it because she has been able to bring on new clients that are really in her sweet spot regarding the attorney space. So it is a gradual process. It's not like you make a 180 and you stop doing one as you're building up the other.
Yeah, and I'm going to mention Linda Arnazani, who's on the chat with us, or she's on this, who's a good friend of me and LeanLaw, made that decision, I don't know, Linda, like 2 years ago, to really focus on law. And she's now like this, she has a brand of law, but I don't believe that she just dumped all her clients and said, I'm just going to be law. And we have another, what we call LeanLaw Accounting Pro, Brandy Derrick. She did it the inverse, which is she started her bookkeeping practice only in law, which was super scary for her because she was turning away other clients. I'm going to answer this question that I think it's Amelia asked. She says, what types of networking venues would you recommend for accountants to meet attorneys? I have my answer. I'm going to let Loren go first. Loren, do you have an answer to that?
Oh, I thought that you were going first. Okay,
no,
yes.
I want to let you go first.
I have thoughts about everything. So the thing that I would say is really figure out, do some research, find out where attorneys hang out, which is what I was posting to Amelia. It might be about going to conferences. It could be understanding what is it that they read, where do they consume information, whether it's virtually or through print or other type of media, then possibly posting articles there. There could be maybe Facebook groups that are attorney focused and that you could be in there also looking for when they're asking questions about finances and bookkeeping and then be able to answer those things. It's similar to really a lot of what I did once I started to shift and specialize in bookkeeping and accounting professionals is I was on the fence for years. I just want to really go there and be very transparent. I was on the fence for years looking between accounting professionals and photographers for a variety of reasons. I had a nice mix of both of them and I enjoyed working with both. And it was really after several years going back and forth between both of those, I just made a decision and I recognized that what I had to offer was a better match for accounting professionals. So I was going to put all my efforts into this particular segment. And like you, Jonathan, once I really made that commitment, it was absolutely liberating because now I knew exactly where to put all my energy. And it's doing things like going to QuickBooks Connect, going to Scaling New Heights. I am a contributor for Accounting Web as well as Intuit's Firm of the Future. I've connected with you and I'm doing this webinar. So even though I am not an accounting professional, I have connected with resources that accounting professionals go to in order to start to be able to have people become aware of who I am, what I do, and how I might be able to be of service.
So I'm going to answer that question a little differently,
Please.
Which is going to segue to our next question. So I think the first question about networking is, what community do you want to service and where? And what I mean by that is we have a LeanLaw accounting pro who wants to own Montana. And she's really interested in Montana. So there's like 2 cities, Billings and Bozeman, Montana, that she would cover. So if you're in Los Angeles and, like Lorette clashes in Southern California, hi Lorette, you can think about a geographical niche because you might want to focus on an area. And from then, you would then think about networking groups, the local bar association, other places to Loren's point of where people are. If you're going to have a virtual practice like Linda Artisani's, then you might want to think about developing a more online networking tactic, which is what Loren said is a LinkedIn or other social. And not to suggest it's an absolute, you're going to do one or the other, but it's difficult to get a client in Los Angeles, in Florida, if you don't have some online brand or some connection like a LeanLaw that might connect the dots. So if you're going to think local, I think the absolute first place to think about networking is call the lawyers you know. I always coach this. If you're thinking about niching into law, one of the first things you can do is tell everyone. Tell your local community, because what happens is you begin to be seen as the law accounting person. And when someone comes into an interaction with an attorney, they'll say, oh, you should call, Linda. She only works with attorneys. And so it becomes part of your brand locally. The bar associations do have events, but I'd be very cautious about setting up a booth. Most of the people who go to bar events aren't looking for vendors per se. They're looking to get continued learning education. But what the opportunity is through the bar association is to educate. So whether that's a guest blog post or a lecture on trust accounting or something of that nature, then you become in the local bar association, and the smaller it is, the easier it is to get access. You become that expert in that community for that one problem to solve, like trust accounting. So the idea is, if you're going to be local and you have the depth of the community like Los Angeles, find very specific outlets. If you're going to be broad, in my opinion, think about LinkedIn and other places where you can begin to be part of online communities. But one doesn't preclude the other. Loren, you and I were talking, and so, let's talk about that virtual approach a little bit. What about people who prefer in-person connections? What are your thoughts about networking, from that perspective, which is someone, you kind of mentioned some of the do's, but like, what are the tactics if you're going to be online, or what are the tactics if you're going to be offline? What are the preferences there?
I believe that the strategy overall is probably the same for both of them. First of all, you want to commit to just one or two things that you want to do consistently, because it's about compounding interest. The more that you do something consistently, the more that it's going to be effective for you. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you want to recognize what's commonly called as the know, like, and trust factor. Basically what that is defined as is, the knowing part is that you have visibility. People just know you exist, whether it's locally in person in a community or it's virtually and online. The liking part is that people are starting to trust you. They see you, you're consistent, you give good information. They might have tried a couple of things and they got results based upon the information that you're giving. And then from the know, like, and trust factor, once they trust you, that's where the profits happen. That's when you start to get people interested in what you have to offer. They are checking out whether to work with you or not. And you might be starting to get referrals from other people who know about what you do, but they don't offer that particular service, so they see you as a referral source. That's the first thing. The other part with the virtual versus the in-person networking is that, I don't know about you. Well, I know about you, Jonathan. You're an extrovert. We've had this conversation before where I'm actually more of an introvert, and I can be an extrovert when I need to be, but I would rather be home in my yoga pants sitting behind a computer if I had my preference. So networking for me as an introvert is different than it is as an extrovert, but I see the value of in-person networking because a lot of times the fastest way to get a client is by them actually meeting you in person, seeing you in the flesh. They get a sense of who you are and what you have to offer in a way that they can't virtually. It's a faster process. Then with the networking, it's really about being strategic about maybe 2 places or so where you want to go, be seen, spend your time, develop relationships. And the key here is that networking events are an opportunity to meet people, but you don't want to have to meet everybody in the room. You want to be strategic and meet only a couple people. And then those couple people that you meet, you want to be able to have an additional conversation outside of that particular event to really get better acquainted. So I believe that if you're looking to own Montana, then probably you're going to a lot of in-person networking events, especially in the larger cities. And then if you're looking to really develop this business virtually, then it's finding ways to be in front of people, whether it's through the resources they consume, social media, or even having virtual conversations that are through Zoom or by phone.
Yeah, and I think it's, I want to touch on 2 points you made. I think there's this word trust. And I said this earlier in our conversation about vernacular. And you brought up this idea of what problems you're solving, unique problems. If you all look at your websites, all of you, and go back and say, how are you presenting it? I would imagine the majority of you, and I hope I'm wrong, on your website, when someone comes in and receives it, right, says, I do bookkeeping, or I do accounting, I do accounts payable and accounts receivable, and we're going to be good for your financials. And you basically cite really generic things that we would expect you to do as a bookkeeper, right? It's like going to the car dealership and then saying, the car has tires. You're like, of course the car has tires. I want to know if it's a truck. I want to know what utility it is. And one of the most important things is that you can always convey your value, the value that you offer to a firm. And so when you're networking and you go up and you, by chance, get a conversation with a lawyer, or you get a chance with someone who knows lawyers, you being able to articulate in the language of law, like the words trust accounting or contingency, and learning some of that vernacular immediately elevates you, because you're not talking about accounts payable. Lawyers don't care about accounts payable. They expect you to know it. What they want to understand is, do you understand how to handle a contingency billing? Or do you understand how to make sure that you can reconcile a trust account, or do compensation reporting, or things that are meaningful to them? Because that's where you become the trusted advisor, and that's where trust is created. So I think tactically it's important to do all the things Loren is saying, but it comes as a precursor that you really need to begin to develop that vernacular. And there's so many different outlets to get that vernacular that are free and accessible, because my last point, then we'll get to our next question, Loren, is that law requires what's called continued learning education, CLE credits. Mm-hmm. In many instances, CLE credits are free, meaning they're online courses that lawyers have to do to get credit so they stay accredited with their bar association. Now, some of you might want to host one of those and put one on, right? You could do that around trust accounting, because it's something that a lawyer would attend. But you can go attend someone else's and begin to learn some of the issues related to finances that are online. And if you search CLE, that's just a vehicle to begin to develop that vernacular. So I just wanted to share that trust is really important, but it's difficult to create trust if you can't articulate your value, and you can't articulate your value in a language that that a lawyer can receive. If they're having to translate accounting language, you've lost them, because they're not hearing what you want to say. All right. So there's this competitive feel that, most folks have this, okay, we're competing for some of the same clients. And we were talking about this, and you said, is there a way to market and network without competing? So you're right, because this is a big about networking, how do we network? How do we establish ourselves in this niche? But how do we overcome sort of our trepidation around competing with some of our colleagues?
When I think about competing, I feel like it's coming from a lack of mentality of there not being enough. And that when that happens, then you're focusing on why it's not working or the problems. What I want to do is really help you rise above the competition. And that's really what I do with my clients too, is help them to be able to discern what is unique about what they offer and how to be able to start to articulate that. And Jonathan, I also want to reinforce what you were saying about offering the webinars for the CLEs, because one of my clients is actually doing that this week. She is doing a webinar through the ABA. It is CLEs, and it's absolutely on trust accounting. That is a hot topic. They will attend, and it adds value to what it is that they're already doing. And it positions you as the expert. Speaking is the best way you can be seen as an expert to your audience or to your particular niche. But I want to go ahead and break it down into 5 steps that help you to rise above the competition and be seen as that go-to person, as opposed to one of many where you're commoditized. And the first thing is systems.
Hold on, Loren, let's go slow.
Yeah.
So step 1, what's step 1?
Step 1 is systems.
Okay,
I believe that systems give you freedom. It's about looking at something you want to do consistently that expands your efforts and has an impact. That could be networking. Like I said, maybe 1 or 2 network meetings that you participate in. It could be some type of virtual marketing that you want to do, or using social media in a consistent way. The bottom line with any system is to know the steps. And also, if it's not on your calendar, especially the posting part for social media or the networking events, you're not going to do it consistently. You have to put it on your calendar. So the first thing is figure out a system that works best for you and you're going to commit to consistently. The second one is find some strategic partnerships. You're not going to grow just on your own as quickly as if you maybe align yourself with other people. It's similar to what Jonathan and I have developed over time, is we have a strategic partnership. There are times when I have recommended LeanLaw to people that I know in the accounting profession that also work with attorneys, and he's also now hosting me to his community. So find those strategic partnerships where you can actually support each other, and it's very, very complementary. You look like you want to say something.
I do, one quick. And a partnership doesn't need to be with a company per se, right? So Loren created one with LeanLaw and with me. A partnership could be another accounting professional that doesn't do what you do, and you say, I'll refer clients to you and you refer clients to me for these niches that we both serve. So don't be intimidated by the word partnerships. It just means you're collaborating with someone and you both have a like goal. And that can be very micro, or it could be really macro, meaning maybe you could get, a software company like LeanLaw creates a partnership. That may be a little harder, but finding colleagues in your community, you can create a partnership. It could be the bar association, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to make that note. Sometimes that word is intimidating. Okay, number 3.
Right. Number 3 is having a success mindset. You're going to be showing up differently if you're committed compared to if you're interested. When you're interested, you'll do things until it's uncomfortable or you hit some type of block. When you're committed, you're willing to work those ways through and figure out how to be able to get past that block. And you're going to do it consistently, no matter what, even when it's difficult. One of the things to look at when you have a success mindset is that you want to be aware of the 80-20 rule. Basically, probably 20% of what you do is going to get 80% of those results. So think about 1 or 2 things that you are willing to do consistently in order to get results. It's a broken record. We've talked about it before, but really, I'd rather you do 1 or 2 things consistently than have 6 things that you're trying to do. But it's more like you go in and you do it, and then you ghost it for a while, and you're not doing it because you're overwhelmed.
And I would imagine that helps someone to manage this when they're having to do all the other work. Because if they think about this, it feels overwhelming. Oh, I've got to network, I've got to learn, I've got to do this. Like, as what you just said, 1 thing or 2 things that you say, okay, I can commit to this. I can commit to this one tactic because I don't feel overwhelmed by it. That, I would imagine that's a big catalyst to help someone move forward.
Plus also, when you're looking at committing to those 1 or 2 things on a regular basis, with some of them, if you develop a system about how you approach it or how you position yourself, you might actually be able to pass it on to somebody else to do for you, or in the name of your firm. You don't have to be necessarily the one doing it yourself. You want to really put the majority of your time on your higher level activities. And some of that is going to be networking, whether virtual or in person, but there's some lower level activities that are below your pay grade, which we'll probably touch more on our 3rd webinar, going from the employer to employee to the CEO mindset, that you want to pass forward and have someone else do for you. Anyway, that's number 3. Number 4 is staying on course and recognize that there's going to be ups and downs. I know that a lot of times I make a plan and then it doesn't go as planned, but I stick with it no matter what, and recognize that this is the marathon mindset of compounding interest. Consistent efforts over time get you the best results. So consistency is really important. And as accounting professionals, you understand how compounding interest works. And that applies to your efforts also. And then number 5 is start now. It's easy to overthink it, to research it, to postpone it, and it eventually needs to have a start date. Put that start date on your calendar, put what you're going to do in your calendar, and start doing it now. 1, maybe 2 things. That's all you need to do. We're in January. It's a busy time of year for everybody here. So the fact that you even took time away from working in your business to work on your business by being with us today is an advanced move. I want to acknowledge that. Find 1 or 2 things you want to do consistently, and compounding interest is the best way to go.
And I want to kind of make a point on this start now. So, and the reason I say this is because I talk to so many people who get interested in the LeanLaw Accounting Pro program, and I have these conversations about people niching. And one of the things that I see is a lot of trepidation that accounting professionals and bookkeepings, everything needs to be in order and sort of, I wouldn't say perfect, but accurate and really, buttoned up before you feel comfortable. And the truth is, you just have to start. I've worked with many people when they want a client, they want a law client, and they're come to LeanLaw and they're like, okay, what do I do now? And the truth is, it's messy in the beginning. The client doesn't see the mess per se, but it's messy as you learn it. I have Brandy Derrick in my head. She runs Legalese Accounting. She's a friend and a partner of LeanLaw. And the first time she reconciled the trust account, it took her 6 or 8 hours. Mm-hmm. Right? And she just did it because she didn't understand it. But the point was that she was doing it. And there's certain aspect of working with law firms or any niche that you just have, you can't be taught, it can only be learned. And to be learned, you actually have to do it. So your point, start now, you just have to, it's okay. You can go have a conversation tomorrow with a lawyer. If you have a friend who is a lawyer or a friend of a friend who's a lawyer, and you sit down and you say, hey, I just want to understand how you run your financial side. Lawyers will talk to you. And that begins this process of having a conversation. It begins the process of learning language. It begins the process of learning, what their procedures are. And that's about starting and having dialogue. And I just think that this community, and I'm not speaking to the people who are here necessarily in this webinar, are a little too cautious at times in trying to move forward because they have this anxiety that they don't know something. And in many instances, you're not being hired because you know all the answers. You're being hired because you know how to go find the solution. And I think that's really important in this process to keep that in mind. I mean, no, you got to have some knowledge. I'm not trying to mitigate that. Okay, so those are the 5 steps. And I just want to review them, and I put them in the chat session. Step 1 is systems. Step 2 is find partnerships. Super, super important. I think that's really an awesome step 2. Step 3 is have a success mindset. Step 4 is staying on course. And step 5 is to start now. Okay, so I want to spend the last, we've got about 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I'm asking to the audience, if anyone has a question, please pose it. We're really here to answer those questions, and we have a little time to do so. But let's shift gears a little and talk tactically. I mean, we talked about these steps. What's your, how would someone know what to do first, right? I mean, it's systems. Like, how do you come up with a system?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the first thing is to decide who your ideal client is. And that's why in the Ultimate Pricing Bootcamp, that's the first thing I look at. It gets even more specific than a niche. When I look at an ideal client, I don't want to talk about an avatar, which a lot of marketers talk about, which is make up this fictitious ideal person, because you're not dealing with fictitious people. You're dealing with real people. So when you're thinking about who your ideal client is, it's not just about the demographics, the profession, the education, or where they might be living and how many kids they have. It's more about what are the characteristics that make, or the qualities that make up that particular type of person that you work really well with. I call those psychographics. With the psychographics, there's certain traits that someone that I'm working with has, and it's just a really nice way to work with someone. I look forward to working with those types of people, as opposed to people that have other traits. Like for me, someone that I don't work well with is whiners. I don't work well with people who are always whining, always blaming circumstances. They're always focusing on what's wrong, but they very rarely take responsibility for themselves. Or if they do make a mistake, they never ever take ownership for it. So those are not my people, and I know that. The people that I see this nice smile on your face.
Well, I'm laughing because, like, you know, who likes a whining person who wants to blame?
You know what? There are some people who love people in that.
Like that, like, I mean, but
you know what?
But it's totally the truth, though, because I mean, it's interesting at LeanLaw. I'm sorry to digress just for a second.
That's okay.
When we started the company, you know, anyone who would buy our software, we were thrilled about. And just because we're like, oh my gosh, someone's actually buying this software. Like we make it and we're like, well, it's actually happening. And so you work with anyone because you're so thrilled that someone will take it. And now it's interesting because I talk a lot in our sales process about fit. If we're not a good fit, client and software vendor, I don't want them as a customer. And I was on the phone today and it was, you know, it's a little deal, 4 or 5 seats. But I was willing to say, hey, don't buy our software if it's not a good fit, because I don't want to hear you fetch about it later, because it's too much work to sustain the relationship.
Right.
Because it's not a good fit. And, you know, fit could be personality because your services, fit could be your service offering. But I think a lot about fit. And now I'm disciplined with our organization to say who is a good fit and who's a bad fit.
Absolutely. Those people who are not a good fit for me, I call them energy vampires. I'm drained after talking with them.
What do you call them?
Energy vampires. They drain my energy. I don't want to be around them. The negativity is not a good fit for me. But it's also that there's some people that do feel that they have obstacles, and it's not that they don't want to do it, they just don't know how to do it. And even though there might be blocks for those people, they're open to looking at things differently than they've always been doing it. They're willing to try something, and they're more coachable. So I need people who are really willing to work with me in partnership, as opposed to fight and resist me every single step of the way. That's one of the things that I look at, is knowing who your ideal client is. And then once I know that about someone's client, we can figure out where they hang out, which we've touched on a couple of different times. And the other part is, instead of waiting for someone to come to you, be proactive and go out and find them. It's a reason why I go to several different conferences for accounting professionals, is that I don't want to be a best kept secret. I want to be out there where my ideal client hangs out, and either be in the room, in front of the room, speaking to them and teaching them and giving information that's useful to them, like we're doing now, or I want to be really meeting them face to face and having a conversation, or a virtual conversation in some way. So really be proactive, take that step. It might not be really beautiful in the beginning. It could be a little bit ugly. But as you were saying earlier, Jonathan, the more you do something, the better it'll be, and the better results you'll get from just continuing to put the effort and the energy into it.
Yeah, I want to go back to one thing you said and talk a little bit about this ideal client. When you start this, it's easy to start saying, I want a mid-sized law firm or I want a, you know, what we call at LeanLaw, a micro client or a solo plus. A solo is someone who just works for themselves. Like they're just an independent lawyer, they have no staff. A solo plus, and these are LeanLaw's words, they're not necessarily industry words. A solo plus is someone who is a principal attorney that has some assistants, a paralegal, a legal secretary, and the dynamic changes because now you have payroll and things like that. And then you get to a micro firm, and that's typically 2 partners to 5 partners, and then you get into small law. And then once you get above 5 attorneys and you start getting into the, 8 and up, you get into what we call, and are commonly calling a mid-market. The point I'm making is that's good to put structure around that, because understanding who that ideal client from a sizing relates to services, but that's not the whole story. And what I mean is, you should. What I found, and I'm at an age now where I kind of know what I like and what I don't, and what I pay attention to is what sparks joy for me.
Mm-hmm.
When I have interactions, and really when I get to have that conversation with an attorney and listen to them and watch them steward through this modernization by adopting LeanLaw, and maybe get to invite in an accounting pro, and I see that transformation. Linda Artesani and I worked on a client in Cleveland, and to watch that transformation and then to hear their joy, it's very gratifying. So I pay very close attention to what sparks joy and try to get rid of the people. Like, there's this one client in our mind that I put a boundary on, and I'm like, if she leaves, I'm really almost happy about it, because she just doesn't spark any joy. She's ungrateful. She hates QuickBooks Online. She just fetches about everything. And it's like, even if we offer help, she's just mean. I'm like,
why don't you just fire her, Jonathan?
Because she's paying her software, and if she doesn't bother us, she's an annuity. But I won't go out of my way to help her. Whereas other people, this attorney in Texas, I jumped on his phone, on his computer, and helped him reconcile his trust accounting, because he was a great guy, and he's a really interesting dude, And I think that that's important, as you understand who these attorneys are and who their staff are, that you find these connections of what sparks joy and what doesn't, and focus and pay attention to what sparks joy, and divorce yourself from what doesn't. Because that's all about trying to find that ideal client, at least from my perspective.
Kimberly wanted you to quickly repeat your list of firm sizes. Do you want to do that? Do you want to?
What was it? Oh, yeah, I'm happy to do it. So when we think of firm size, we think of solo, which is just an individual. Solo plus is an individual attorney that has staff. So typically that's a paralegal or a legal secretary. Then you go into the micro firm, which tends to have multiple attorneys and usually a partnership. That's when you start triggering into compensation tracking, because you have partnerships that have different compensation. When you're dealing with solo, it's about basic accounting mechanics and are they being profitable? Solo plus is my staff being utilized, and am I profitable? When you get into micro, you start getting into the idea of, well, are they profitable as a business? Are the individual practices profitable? How do they track compensation? How do they deal with staff? When you start getting into small law, which tends to be about 5 to 10 attorneys, which encompasses about 7 to 10 total people in the firm, then you're getting into payroll and mechanics around managing staff and much more complex compensation structures. And that kind of carries up into what we call mid-market or larger size firms, which tend to be, 8 lawyers and up. And I know I have some redundancy in numbers, but it also depends on the dynamic and complexity of the law firm and what they do. So those are the 5 groupings that we at LeanLaw carve out when we think about who it is that we service. Oh yeah, Loren, you put that. Okay, Loren, we've got just a few minutes left.
Yep.
And if there's other questions, ask them now, please. I want to talk about next steps. I'm going to mention your program again. I'm going to actually link it. Again, I'm not trying to make this a sales platform, but I believe in Loren and her work, and I want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to see that. There's a link in the chat session. So yeah, they can join your session, right? That's next. That's one of the things. But so coach the group on what's next. What do they have to do? We talked about a lot today. So what do you think? Give me a little summary and then talk about what's next, please.
I think that what's next is that you have to have an idea as to what you want to accomplish in 2020. We're at the beginning of a new year, and the bottom line is that if you know what you want to accomplish in 2020, you're going to be more likely to actually achieve those results or maybe even surpass them than if you really don't have anything concrete in mind that you're working towards. It's similar to a ship. If the ship knows where the destination is that it's going to be more likely to actually hit that port. Whereas if it makes just a 1 degree move in its course, over the course of time, it's going to be way, way far away from what it wants to achieve. So what's next is really, if you're interested in looking at how to price your services, developing your niche, packaging, starting to separate your fees from time, you know that that's something that's been on your mind. You want to do, you can see the benefits of doing, but you need some hand-holding, some guidance, some input to be able to answer your questions and give you those how-tos, or to help you get out of your own way. That's exactly what I do. And that's why I put the Ultimate Pricing Bootcamp together, is because not everybody's going to be ready to work with me in my mastermind group or doing private coaching with me. And I want to be able to expand my impact and my reach, and being able to help with the programs, with bundling, with pricing is absolutely the best way that I can help to be able to lift up accounting professionals. Yeah. So as you said, Jonathan, it starts February 4th. I'm going to have a conversation if anybody has questions, wants further information. The website that you listed has a lot of information, and the first 10 people that register will go ahead and also get a bonus private coaching session with me.
So if they're not ready, so I want to flip this whole thing and say it and ask the question and have you answer the question in a slightly different way. If they're not ready to engage with you in your community and your sort of arc, what do you recommend to this group as the next step? If they want to self-serve, if they want to go out on their own, like what would you tell them to do? Like what's the next step there?
If they want to go on their own, first it's about having a strategic plan, because if you have some idea as to what you want and what you want to accomplish, then you're going to be more likely to focus on that. When you're looking at moving in that direction, start to figure out who that ideal client is, not just the demographics like we mentioned, but also those psychographics. What are the characteristics of an ideal client? And then look at where do they hang out that you can help to give them information. Recognize that you have to develop that know, like, and trust factor. So this is about giving first before you can expect to receive. As you're giving information, people will become more aware, and then give them the steps of how to be able to access you and have a conversation with you to see if it's a good fit for working together. So know the problem that you solve.
Yeah, and I'm going to just spend 1 minute from my perspective, which is, I think, even a precursor, which is, you know, empower yourself by deciding you want a niche. Pick your niche, right? I think there's almost some self-discovery to say, I actually want to do this and have the courage to do this. And I think to your point, Loren, it's about educating yourself to the point that you can begin to give advice and knowledge in different mechanisms or mediums to do that. And I think what happens is organically you become, correct me if I'm wrong, the trusted advisor. You become branded. If you're spouting out on a specific topic and you have that expertise, you become that expert. Like Mo's on the line, and Mo's a Canadian LeanLaw accounting pro, and Lo could, you know, for our purposes, Mo's our Canadian expert right now, because he happens to have that niche. He understands taxation as it relates to services. He understands LeanLaw, and he understands QuickBooks Online. Like, that's a great niche to be in for someone like Mo, because he can uniquely position himself. Okay, you had something to say.
And just one last thing, I posted it. If you really want that first step, your clients care more about what you know than what you do.
Yeah.
So how can you help them succeed? That is the bottom line.
And you know, and ultimately be seen as that trusted advisor. Okay, Loren, as always, thank you. To the audience, I'm fully accessible if anyone has any questions. I really encourage you, if you haven't done so, to join our Accounting Pro program. I really encourage you next week, Wednesday the 15th, to join up at our meetup. It's fun. And Loren, as always, thank you so much for this collaboration and this partnership. To all of you on the line, thank you. I wish you all a very prosperous 2020. And I wish you all well. Thank you so much for attending today, and I'm going to end the session. See you, Loren. Nice talking to you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.